Human found portal. To alien world, Queen decided to keep him. A maze of stone and shadow. Ryder crouched at the edge of a narrow ledge, sweat beading at his brow despite the chill, every muscle tight with anticipation. The battered audio device in his hands trembled as he adjusted the gain, the crackle of static sharp in his ears. He pressed the headphones tighter, shutting out the restless echoes of the cavern, chasing something he couldn't quite name. His headlamp flickered across the jagged walls, sending wild shadows darting through the gloom. He held his breath. Beneath the hiss of static, a low vibration began, a sound that felt less like noise and more like a presence, threading through the ancient rock, vibrating in his bones. "That can't be real," Ryder whispered, barely daring to trust his own voice. He listened, transfixed. The vibration grew, a deep, impossible resonance, trembling the stone under his knees. His heart hammered, equal parts fear and wonder. He reached out to steady himself, his fingers brushing cold granite. Drawn by the call, Ryder rose. Each boot scrape echoed, muffled in the thick, oppressive air. The light from his headlamp carved only a narrow tunnel through the darkness, the world collapsing to the few feet in front of him. With every step, the silence grew heavier, as if the cave itself were holding its breath, watching him. The vibrations swelled, no longer just sound, but something that pressed at his mind, nudging him deeper. The tunnel twisted sharply, the floor uneven beneath him. Suddenly, his boot caught on a rise. He stumbled, hands splaying against the stone. The vibrations surged, a pulse that seemed to realign the world around him. Ahead, a narrow fissure split the wall. A faint, unnatural shimmer glowed within. Ryder squeezed through, dust billowing around him, and emerged into a chamber that took his breath. One wall loomed impossibly smooth, a flawless plane of black crystal, darker than night, consuming the light from his lamp. Its surface seemed to ripple, alive and bottomless. His meters screeched, needles jumping erratically. Ryder fumbled with the controls, but the readout spun uselessly, wild and indecipherable. The air tingled against his skin, electric and dense. He felt, irrationally, that the crystal was watching him. Compelled, Ryder stepped closer. His breath came ragged. He reached out, fingertips trembling, and pressed his palm to the obsidian surface. No sound, no flash, just a silent seismic jolt, a twist that rolled through him, upending every sense. Ryder tried to cry out, but the world folded in on itself, silent and inexorable. He hit the ground hard. The floor beneath him was not stone but glassy crystal, warm and thrumming with a golden glow. The whole cavern pulsed, as if lit from within, casting surreal, shifting patterns across the arching walls. The silence was absolute, so dense it pressed on his ears, his chest, threatening to smother him. Ryder staggered upright, lungs heaving in the soundless void. He opened his mouth to scream, but not even his breath broke the silence. Panic clawed through him, a primal terror in this place where nothing moved, nothing spoke. Out of the shimmering gold light, two figures materialized. Guards, their forms unmistakably humanoid, but wrought from living onyx, gold veins pulsing along their arms and faces. Their eyes were dark, unreadable. Each bore a staff, the tips alive with violet energy that crackled in the charged air. They moved with inhuman grace, each step measured, inexorable, closing the distance without a sound. Ryder's hands shot up instinctively, but the guards gave no reaction. They watched him, their golden tracery flickering, their staves humming a note he could feel but not hear. A third presence entered, taller, radiating authority. She strode into the golden light, her skin polished black, crisscrossed with intricate gold filigree that pulsed like a living heartbeat. Her hair fell in a cascade of pure white, framing a face both severe and mesmerizing. Her eyes, solid gold, fixed on Ryder with piercing intensity. Her bearing was regal, assured. Princess Zyron. She studied him, every line of her posture sharp with purpose. The guards flanked him, their staves leveled, not touching, but forming a living barrier. Ryder swallowed, nerves raw. He forced out a hoarse whisper, voice scraping through the quiet. "Where am I?" His words shattered the silence, an invisible shockwave that rippled through the chamber. The guards recoiled, golden tracery blazing with sudden fire. The energy from their staves arced through the air. But Zyron only drew nearer, her gold patterns blazing even brighter, curiosity and command mingling in her gaze. She raised her hand, a gesture as subtle as it was absolute. The guards tightened their circle, ensuring no escape, but did not touch him. Zyron's eyes never left his. Her stance made it clear. Ryder was her discovery, her claim. The balance of power had shifted, and nothing would ever be the same. Ryder was kept in a crystalline chamber, luxurious but unmistakably a cell. The walls curved in seamless arcs, grown rather than built, every surface humming with faint energy that vibrated through his bones. A bed formed from silken stone, a basin that conjured water with a touch, a single window of faceted crystal that looked out into the heart of the alien city. The walls glowed with a gentle, living light, shifting in color and intensity, marking the cycles of this place in the absence of sun or moon. He had no way to measure time precisely. It slipped away, impossible to grasp, and Ryder marked its passage by the waxing and waning of the city's radiance. Sometimes the streets below shimmered with gold. Sometimes the towers outside burned violet or retreated into indigo twilight. Through it all, Ryder paced, counted his breaths, pressed his hand to the living wall. The energy beneath the surface seemed to pulse in time with his own heartbeat, a living reminder that he was watched, contained, studied. He was alone, but never unseen. Zyron visited often. She would materialize in the doorway, tall and regal, her presence magnetic. Sometimes she came alone, sometimes flanked by the stoic head guard, Sirac, whose onyx form loomed like a silent sentinel. Zyron would stand and study Ryder in silence, her gold tracery shifting and swirling in patterns he longed to decipher. She rarely spoke, her language a current he could not swim in, but Ryder felt her mind brushing his, sending impressions, curiosity, analysis, a hunger for understanding. At times her gaze was so intent he could almost feel her thoughts tracing the lines of his face. He tried to speak to her at first, tried to ask questions, tried to fill the oppressive quiet with the sound of his own voice, but she only watched, her head tilted as if listening to something just out of reach. The silence in the chamber thickened, pressing against him, and Ryder grew desperate for sound, anything to break the endless hush. Isolation gnawed at him. He began to count the seconds, then the cycles. He missed the rattle of gravel beneath his boots, the rough warmth of sunlight on his skin, the simple comfort of his own words echoing back at him. In this place of crystal and gold, even his thoughts felt caged. Zyron was his only company, beautiful, enigmatic, silent. One cycle, when the ache for connection grew unbearable, Ryder sat on the edge of his bed and closed his eyes. He pressed his hands to the humming crystal and began to hum, softly at first, then stronger. A lullaby from his childhood, an old melody carried from earth and memory. The notes vibrated in his chest, fragile and real. Zyron, standing by the doorway, froze. Her golden tracery, usually calm and fluid, flashed in a sudden burst of color, crimson and gold swirling in a storm that lit her from within. She took a step closer, her eyes wide, lips parted in astonishment. For the first time, Ryder saw something like emotion flicker across her regal features. He stopped, startled by her reaction. Zyron's gaze bore into him, pleading, hungry. She took another step, her fingers twitching at her side, as if she could reach out and capture the music in her palm. "Again," she said, her voice low, the words shaped awkwardly in Ryder's language. Ryder hesitated, then obliged. He sang the lullaby, letting the melody fill the crystalline cell. The music seemed to animate the walls, the energy in the room pulsing in time with the song. Ziren closed her eyes, golden tracery swirling in wild, unpredictable patterns, overwhelmed by sensation. When he finished, she lingered, silent and transfixed, as if reluctant to let the sound fade. A ritual began. Ziren visited more often, and each time Ryder sang, sometimes fragments of old folk songs, sometimes lullabies, sometimes improvised melodies plucked from longing and loneliness. His voice became a bridge across the gulf between them, a thing of wonder and delight. Ziren would sit closer each time, eyes fixed on his lips, studying the shape of every note, her golden tracery alive with shifting patterns. In return, she brought gifts. Rare fruits with iridescent flesh, sweet and tart on his tongue. Shimmering cloth, impossibly soft, woven with threads of gold and indigo. Sometimes she brought strange objects, crystalline discs that played back visions of alien landscapes, or vials of luminous liquid that tingled on his skin. They were tokens, tributes for his performances. But the walls remained. He was pampered, but still a captive. The chamber's door was sealed with living energy, and Sirac, the head guard, never left his post outside. With each visit, Ziren's fascination deepened. She watched him with an intensity that bordered on possessiveness, her golden eyes tracking his every gesture. Sometimes she would reach out, almost touching his hand, then draw back, as if uncertain of the boundary between them. Her silence grew charged, heavy with questions she could not yet form in his tongue. Sirac watched as well. The guard's face was unreadable, but his golden tracery flickered with unease each time Ziren lingered too close, or when Ryder's voice rose in a particularly poignant melody. Yet he obeyed, never interfering, his staff humming quietly at his side. One evening, as Ryder finished a song, a yearning ballad about a sky he'd never see again, the energy at the doorway shifted. Ziren tensed, rising to her full height. Sirac stepped aside, bowing with a stiffness that spoke of rank and rivalry. A new figure entered, Prince Kavir. Taller even than Ziren, he moved with a cold, predatory grace. His golden tracery was sharper, more angular, pulsing with a wintry light. His eyes, hard and assessing, swept over Ryder with open disdain. He wore a mantle of midnight blue, studded with chips of crystal that flickered in the chamber's glow. Kavir's voice was cool, each word edged with contempt. "You waste your time on a primitive," he said, addressing Ziren in the clipped tones of command. "There is nothing here but noise and weakness." Ziren stepped between Ryder and the prince, her posture defensive, every line of her body radiating challenge. Her tracery burned hot and bright, a wall of gold between them. "He is not yours to dismiss," she replied, her tone low and dangerous. "He is mine to study, mine to protect." Kavir's lip curled in a sneer. He took a step closer, looming over them both, and the air in the chamber tightened with unspoken threat. Sirac's hand gripped his staff, uncertain. Ryder held Ziren's gaze, searching for any sign of reassurance. He felt suddenly exposed, the object of a power struggle he barely understood. Kavir's glare promised trouble, a cold fury that boded ill for any who challenged his will. "Remember your duty, Ziren," he hissed. "Do not let sentiment cloud your judgment. This creature is beneath you." With a final cutting glance at Ryder, Kavir turned and swept from the chamber, the energy in his wake crackling with warning. For a moment, silence reigned, heavier than ever. Ziren's shoulders sagged, her golden tracery dimming to a deep, thoughtful amber. She looked at Ryder, something unspoken passing between them, a shared awareness of the stakes, and of how fragile his place here had become. Ryder realized, with a cold twist of certainty, that his survival depended on becoming more than a curiosity. If he was to endure, He would have to matter. To Xiren, to the city, to whatever forces ruled this place. He drew a deep breath, resolved to make himself indispensable, even as the walls of crystal seemed to close in tighter around him. Ryder experimented with his surroundings, pushing past the initial awe and anxiety of captivity. The crystalline chamber became his laboratory, every surface an invitation. He pressed his ear to the walls, tapped with his knuckles, hummed low notes and high, listening to the way the crystal carried and shifted the sound. At first, the responses were subtle, just a faint tickle at the edge of hearing, a trembling beneath his fingertips. But as he tuned his senses, he realized the truth. The crystal was a perfect resonator. It remembered every note, every vibration, storing them in its depths. On the next cycle, Xiren arrived, her presence as steady as the dawn, her eyes curious. Ryder met her at the heart of the chamber, beside a narrow pillar of translucent crystal rising from the floor like the neck of a glass harp. He gestured for her to sit. She obeyed, her movements fluid and regal. "I want to show you something," he said quietly, unsure how much she would understand. He reached for her hand, cool, obsidian, delicate yet strong, and guided her fingers to the pillar. Xiren watched, head cocked, gold tracery rippling with anticipation. "Feel," Ryder whispered. He took a breath, gathered his focus, and sang a clear, unwavering note that matched the pillar's resonance. The crystal answered. Light flared within, golden and pure, vibrating in harmony with his voice. The air shimmered, the sound wrapping around them, palpable as silk. Xiren gasped, eyes widening. Her tracery erupted into dazzling whirls of gold, delight breaking through her usual composure. For a moment, she was as awestruck as he had been, her royal bearing forgotten. "Incredible," she murmured. "You awaken it." Ryder grinned, exhilarated. "You can do it too." Everyone can, if they know how to listen. Their lessons became a ritual. He taught her how to find the right note, to coax the resonance from the crystal, to weave her voice through the room and craft standing waves. They watched, spellbound, as the chamber filled with shifting patterns of light, scarlet and sapphire, emerald and gold, each color and movement a product of their combined voices. "Like painting with sound," Xiren breathed one day, her tone reverent. He nodded. "Exactly. You're not just hearing the music, you're making the room sing with you." Her lips curled into a rare smile. "It feels free." With each lesson, the boundary between teacher and student blurred. Ryder was no longer simply a singer. He was a composer, the architect of a crystal symphony. Xiren became his eager apprentice, her questions growing more confident, her voice bolder. They stood side by side, hands entwined, guiding one another to the right frequency, the right shape of sound. Ryder found himself watching her, not just for her beauty, but for the way her golden eyes shone when the crystal answered her call, the way her tracery danced with every new discovery. Their music grew intimate. Xiren would rest her hand atop his, cool and strong, as they struck a chord together. Her touch lingered, their laughter echoing softly. The guards outside exchanged wary glances, but dared not interrupt. One cycle, Ryder sang a haunting melody, something ancient and mournful, spun from memory and longing. The light in the chamber shifted, the walls quivering with each note. Xiren, seated close enough that their knees nearly touched, shivered. Her tracery blushed gold and rose, pulsing visibly to the rhythm of his heartbeat. As the final note faded, she leaned in, her mind brushed his, not to probe or analyze, but to share, to join, a gentle harmony of longing and tenderness. Ryder's breath caught. In that instant, their souls touched, wordless and profound. "Why do you feel so much?" she whispered, voice unsteady. He swallowed. "Because music is life, Xiren. It's what connects us, even when words fail." She lingered, hand resting atop his, golden eyes soft. You make me remember things I never knew I'd forgotten. Unbeknownst to them, Prince Kavir watched from the shadows of the corridor, his stance rigid, his eyes cold and calculating. He saw not the beauty of discovery, but corruption, a princess enthralled by an outsider, a threat to the order he cherished. His jaw clenched as he withdrew, already scheming. Intrigued by Ryder's scientific mind, Zirin offered him a new gift, a data crystal, iridescent and multifaceted. I want you to know us, she said, to see why we are as we are. With Zirin as interpreter, Ryder delved into the crystal's depths. Holographic images shimmered in the air, cities grown from living stone, towers singing with power, Onari moving in graceful unity. He watched the history of her people unfold. Once, the Onari had wielded song as both art and weapon. Their voices could shape crystal, heal wounds, or level mountains. They had been a symphony, a civilization built on harmony and resonance. But then, disaster. Ryder watched in horror as a choir of Onari unleashed a cataclysm, a wall of sound, dark and terrible, ripping through city and sky. The resonance shattered, the world fractured. Silence fell, not as peace, but as punishment. The survivors, shamed and afraid, imposed the silence on themselves. Song became taboo, a memory buried beneath centuries of stillness. Zirin's voice was hushed. It is why we forbid music, why we fear it. Yet, I cannot help but wonder if we've lost more than we saved. Ryder touched her shoulder gently. Maybe you're ready to find out. He persuaded her to let him bring his battered audio device and frequency meters to the city's heart, a vast cathedral of crystal, columns soaring like frozen thunder, a place both sacred and forbidden. Zirin was anxious, her posture tense, but she trusted him. The royal advisor, a wary figure swathed in iridescent robes, followed, his tracery flickering in agitation. They stood at the cathedral's center, the air thick with anticipation. Ryder set up his equipment, tuning the meters to the unique frequencies he had cataloged in his cell. He looked to Zirin, she nodded, jaw set. He began to sing, softly at first, then with growing confidence. He layered harmonics, letting the audio device augment and echo his voice. The crystal columns picked up the song, amplifying it, their surfaces swirling with darkness and light. Suddenly, the great crystal at the cathedral's heart erupted, not with color, but with a spreading shadow. The resonance deepened, filling the chamber with psychic static. Ryder staggered, clutching his head as memories not his own rushed through him. Onari choirs unleashing devastation, their voices splitting the sky, the agony of silence that followed. Zirin cried out, her hands pressed to her temples as the echoes flooded her mind. The chamber spun with visions, Onari singers raising cities and raising them in the same breath. Zirin's ancestors leading the chorus, voices a force of nature. The silence that followed was not peace, but a cage, the ultimate punishment. Ryder fell to his knees, gasping for air. Zirin collapsed beside him, her tracery blazing white with horror and revelation. He reached for her, voice trembling. Zirin, are you all right? She shook, her golden eyes wide with terror and understanding. My blood carries the song, the most potent voice. I am the key. Ryder's heart pounded. Your people need you, Zirin. The silence is killing them. It's time to reclaim what you are. She looked at him, eyes shining with fear and hope, realization breaking through the centuries of silence. Ryder's song had awakened her legacy, one that could either save or destroy them all. Alarms blared through the cathedral, a shriek of discordant tones reverberating in every surface. Guards surged into the chamber, their obsidian bodies ablaze with crimson tracery, staves crackling with violent energy. They encircled the fallen pair, but their eyes were not on Ryder. The true threat was Xiren, her body shaking, traceries still pulsing with blinding white, the revelation of her legacy crackling in the air. "Step back," barked Sirac, his authority strained as the other guards formed a living wall. Kavir entered with a sweeping, triumphant stride. His golden patterns burned sharp and icy, his voice ringing with accusation. "Behold the heretic! She would awaken the forbidden song, and in so doing, endanger the world we vowed to protect." The court streamed in behind him, elders and counselors, their faces set in lines of shock and fear, each mind flickering across the psychic network that bound them. The chamber filled with a soundless tumult of thought and emotion, 1,000 silent voices colliding. The Onari's unity, so carefully maintained, fractured into chaos. Xiren staggered to her feet, face pale, her gold eyes unfocused. Words failed her. Every attempt to speak unraveled into shivers of psychic static. She looked to Ryder, desperate, but the guards closed in. Kavir's voice rose, echoing from pillar to pillar. "You are unfit to rule, Xiren. You would unleash catastrophe for a song. You are weak, unworthy. Surrender your claim, or face the trial." The elders murmured, their tracery flickering in anxious agreement. Xiren's silence was all the answer they needed. With a curt gesture, Kavir signaled the guards. "Take the outsider," he ordered. "He is the instrument of her corruption." Ryder's arms were pinned before he could protest. Heavy cuffs, humming with suppressive energy, were snapped around his wrists. He fought, but his captors were unyielding. As he was dragged away, he caught one last glimpse of Xiren, her figure crumpling under the weight of the court's judgment. He was led through cold, glittering corridors, no longer a curiosity, but the spark of a crisis. Sirac marched beside him, silent and grim. The guards deposited Ryder in a crystalline chamber far deeper than before, the door sealed by a lattice of blue and violet light. Alone at last, Ryder's fear was gone. In its place was only a relentless worry for Xiren, a burning need to do something, anything, to reach her. He pulled apart his equipment, meters, recorders, cables, fingers flying despite their trembling. Piece by piece, he constructed a new device. It would not be a weapon. He needed a way to speak to someone, anyone who might listen. He soldered and spliced, improvising a transmitter, a crude, subsonic communicator designed to pulse a message through the crystal walls themselves. He tested the harmonics with soft taps, tuning them to the frequency he had learned in his earliest lessons with Xiren. He waited. The hours dragged, measured only by the shifting light outside his tiny window. At last, footsteps approached. The door shimmered open, and Sirac entered, a meal tray balanced in one massive hand. The guard's tracery glowed a troubled purple, his stance wary. Ryder met his eyes, willing him to listen. "Please, you have to help her. She's not the danger. Your silence is." As Sirac set the tray down, Ryder activated his device. A deep, inaudible vibration rippled through the floor. Sirac froze, eyes wide, the message resonating not as sound, but as pure logic. Harmony is not danger. Control is strength. Sirac's hand trembled. His golden tracery shifted, flickering, uncertain. Ryder pleaded silently, holding the guard's gaze. "Help me save her, please." A long moment passed. Sirac's tracery darkened, then pulsed a deep, steady blue. Trust. Without a word, he pressed his palm to the door, dissolving the energy barrier. Ryder stepped into the corridor, breathless. "Thank you," he whispered. Sirac nodded, his voice barely a rumble. "You have one chance. I will stand watch." They moved through the shadowed halls, avoiding patrols, slipping deeper into the city's underbelly. Sirac led Ryder to a small resonance chamber, its walls etched with ancient patterns of music and memory. Xiren stood waiting, wrapped in a cloak of silvered crystal, her golden eyes rimmed red from strain and sleeplessness. Ryder rushed to her, taking her hands. "Are you all right?" She shook her head, voice brittle. "They will force the trial of succession, a duel of will and light. Kavir is a master of the old ways. I am shattered. I cannot win." Sirac took his post outside, staff at the ready. Inside, Ryder cupped Ziren's face, meeting her gaze with steady resolve. "You won't fight him with silence," he said. "We'll fight him with this." He pulled the resonator from his pocket, the device glinting in the chamber's dim light. "You have power the others have forgotten. It's not just voice, it's emotion, connection. I'll help you channel it." Ziren stared at the device, fear and hope warring in her eyes. "I don't know if I can." Ryder pressed the resonator into her hand, closing her fingers around it. "You can. You're not alone. Let me show you." Their lessons began in stolen moments, hours measured in heartbeats and whispers. Ryder taught her how to shape her feelings into music, how to let longing and hope become resonance, how to let pain become power. They sat close, knees touching, breaths mingling in the charged air. "Don't think, feel," he urged, guiding her hand along the resonator's edge. "Let it out, all of it." She tried, voice trembling. At first the notes were jagged, broken by doubt, but with every attempt, Ryder steadied her, singing with her, letting his voice bridge the gap when hers faltered. "Listen to me, Ziren. You are not the silence. You are the song." Her tracery brightened, gold threaded with rose. The crystal walls glimmered as her voice grew stronger, harmonizing with his, their melodies twining in a tapestry of trust. When she stumbled, Ryder caught her, holding her steady. "You are not alone," he whispered. In those secret lessons, their minds touched in ways words could never capture. Ziren poured out her heart, fear, shame, longing, and Ryder received it all, shaping it into music, returning it as strength. At the end of one session, she broke the silence. "Why do you help me? Why risk everything for an outsider?" He brushed a lock of white hair from her face. "Because I love you, Ziren. Because I believe in what you are and what you can become." She closed her eyes, tears glinting gold at the edges. "I have never heard love sung like this before." He smiled, drawing her into his arms, their minds merging in a silent confession of love and trust. The coming trial loomed, but for this moment, they were a harmony, unbroken, unafraid. The day of the trial arrived beneath a vault of crystalline sky. The amphitheater was alive with tension, every tier packed with Onari, elders in shimmering cloaks, warriors in obsidian armor, children clutching parents' hands, all their tracery a restless, undulating sea of light. The psychic hum of their collective presence vibrated through every stone and pillar, anticipation swelling as the fate of their world poised on the edge of a single moment. On the arena floor, Ziren stood tall, her head held high, the golden patterns beneath her obsidian skin blazing bright in the early glow. Across from her, Kavir radiated cold certainty, his own tracery sharp and unyielding, shoulders squared with the confidence of tradition. Between them, the ground seemed to shiver, ancient patterns etched into the stone, reminders of every duel, every trial that had come before. Ryder stood just behind Ziren, his presence alone enough to draw gasps and murmurs from the crowd. Never before had an outsider been allowed so close to the royal line, let alone in the sacred circle where destinies were forged. His heart hammered, but he refused to shrink back. He placed a steadying hand on Ziren's shoulder, scandalous in its intimacy. Kavir's eyes narrowed, his voice loud enough to ripple across the tears. "You disgrace yourself, Ziren. You bring a pet to the trial? Will you hide behind his flesh when your mind fails?" The crowd tensed, tracery flickering with scandal and uncertainty. Ryder met Kavir's gaze unflinching. Ziren said nothing, her silence a challenge. The court's psychic network flared to life, 1,000 minds linked, their judgments a storm in the air. Kavir lifted his hands, gold and indigo light spilling from his palms, and unleashed his attack. A psychic wave crashed toward Zirin, a blade of pure logic, cutting and cold. It carried her doubts, her failures, the memory of her mother's disappointed gaze, the whispered warnings of the elders, all her insecurities brought into sharp, merciless focus. Kavir's voice sliced through the onslaught. "You are weak, ruled by sentiment. Your blood will break us, not save us. Admit your failure and spare us your shame." Zirin staggered, her knees threatening to buckle as the weight of the logic storm pressed inward. For an instant, the amphitheater blurred, the world narrowing to pain and doubt. Ryder's hand gripped her arm. His voice was a whisper, fierce and urgent. "Remember what we practiced. You are not alone, Ziren. Feel it. Let it through you." She closed her eyes, shutting out the amphitheater, the court, even Kavir. She turned inward, finding the storm that churned in her chest. Fear, yes, but also anger for the injustice, love for her people, and something fierce and bright for the man who stood beside her. This time, she did not try to suppress her feelings. Instead, she embraced them, let them flow through every fiber, every shining vein. She opened her mouth. A single flawless note bloomed from her lips, soft but impossibly clear. The sound shimmered, pure harmony made audible, not chaos, but unity. The note resonated through the crystal beneath their feet, up into the pillars and out across the crowd, bypassing reason and logic, touching every Onari at the core of their being. The psychic network, tuned for battle, was overwhelmed by something wholly unexpected: revelation. The note spoke not of destruction, but of forgiveness, hope, and shared longing. It was a call, not a command, and it swept through the amphitheater like a sunrise. Kavir faltered mid-strike. His psychic assault wavered, then shattered, crumbling under the weight of the emotional truth in Ziren's song. He staggered backward, clutching at his temples, unable to withstand the simple, undeniable reality of what she offered. The duel ended before he could recover. A stunned silence fell. The elders stared, mouths open. The tracery of the crowd shifted from red and blue to warm, radiant gold. The amphitheater pulsed with awe, every Onari feeling the resonance still echoing in their bones. Ziren's golden patterns burned brighter than ever, not with violence, but with the transcendent power of harmony. Ziren lifted her head, the last of the song fading into crystalline air. She looked at Kavir, who knelt defeated, then at the assembly, her people, her family, her destiny. The silence broke as she crossed the arena, every step purposeful and sure. She walked straight to Ryder, ignoring the gasps and whispers. Before the entire court, she took his hand in hers, her fingers lacing with his. Her voice rang out, steady and proud, amplified by the lingering magic in the crystal. "The silence is ended," Zarin declared. "A new era begins with a new bond. This is Ryder, my consort. He taught me to find my voice." Shock rippled through the tears, quickly followed by a swelling chorus of approval. The golden tracery of the court glowed brighter, many heads bowing in acceptance. Even the elders, guardians of tradition, found themselves moved by the song's truth. Ziren's eyes glistened as she gazed at Ryder, gratitude and love shining between them. "Together, we will lead you into a future where harmony is not feared, but embraced." Ryder squeezed her hand, overwhelmed by pride, relief, and the fierce certainty that they were no longer alone. He was no longer a captive, but the Queen's chosen, the man who had helped a silent world remember how to sing. Hand in hand, Ziren and Ryder left the arena behind, the Onari parting before them, hope rekindled in every heart. The sound of her note lingered in the city's crystal bones, a promise that change had come, not with destruction, but with the strength of a single shared song. 5 years later, the city of Velis was transformed. Where once silence had reigned, now light and music wove together in a living tapestry. Crystal spires rose higher than before, their facets shimmering with the melodies Ryder had composed. Every surface hummed with the voices of the Onari, no longer muted, but alive with laughter, conversation, and song. Bridges of glass arced above the streets, echoing with children's choruses. Gardens burst into bloom with every note, and the golden tracery of the Onari pulsed in time with the city's harmonic pulse. Tonight was the Festival of Awakening, the most joyous day of the year. It marked the anniversary of the day Ziren reclaimed her people's voice and changed the fate of Velis forever. Lanterns of crystal and gold hung from every archway, casting shifting patterns over the gathering crowds. At the city's heart, a great amphitheater thrummed with anticipation, the air scented with sweet fruit and possibility. From a wide balcony high above, Ryder watched as the festival unfolded. He stood at the edge, hands braced on the cool stone, his heart full as young Onari sang in the plaza below. Their voices, clear, playful, sometimes imperfect, rose and mingled, painting the air with light that danced across the faces of their kin. Golden tracery glittered on every brow, bright with hope and pride. Ryder had become chief architect of sound, his vision written into the very bones of the city. The spires resonated with his harmonic blueprints, each day a new experiment in joy. Yet it was these moments, watching children weave melody and light, laughter ringing unguarded through the streets, that meant the most. Warmth circled him from behind, familiar arms slipping around his waist. Zyron's touch was soft, her golden tracery warm where it pressed against his skin. She rested her chin on his shoulder, her mane of white hair tumbling forward as she watched the children with him. "They are beautiful," she murmured, awe and affection blending in her voice. Ryder smiled, turning to face her. They had the best guide. Zyron's eyes sparkled, radiant with pride. She pressed her lips to his in a deep, lingering kiss, intimate, yet unashamedly public. Their love was the foundation of this new world, and the people of Velis looked up to them, inspired by what they had built together. Ryder's hands traced the lines of her cheek as she pulled him close, the music below swelling in their shared silence. A small voice rang out above the crowd, a child's, bright as a bell. "Papa! Mama!" Leah bounded onto the balcony, her wild mane of white hair floating around her face, golden tracery pulsing with excitement. She clutched a crystal creature, a tiny singing dragon, whose melody was charmingly off-key. She held it up, her gold-flecked eyes wide with concern. "Darrow says it's singing wrong," she announced, pouting in earnest. Ryder knelt and took the creature, tuning it with a gentle, practiced note. The dragon's song shifted, falling into perfect harmony. Leia giggled in delight, clapping her hands. Her laughter carried through the air, and a nearby vine burst into bloom, golden flowers curling toward her as if in greeting. Zyron's hand settled on Ryder's shoulder, fingers strong and gentle. She watched Leah, pride and worry mingling in her gaze. "You are a miracle, little one," she whispered. Leia's power was vast, untamed, unpredictable. She was a living bridge between worlds, her every mood echoed in the city's light and song. Teaching her had been their greatest challenge and their greatest joy, each day a lesson in wonder and humility. As night deepened, the festival's energy softened. Lanterns glowed low, families gathered in quiet circles, and the city hummed with peace. Leah, spent from excitement, curled in Ziren's arms and drifted into sleep, a faint golden glow wrapping her like a blanket. Ryder and Ziren moved to a smaller balcony, away from the revelry. Below, the city shimmered with light, as if 1,000 tiny suns had scattered themselves across Velis. For a while they simply stood together, watching their people, now truly a people, not a shadow of one, live and celebrate. Softly, Zyron broke the silence. Kavir has petitioned the council. He wants Leah's education to be controlled, regulated, they say, for her safety. But we know the truth. He fears her strength. Ryder's jaw tensed. No, that won't happen. Ziren's eyes flashed, her voice fierce. I will not let them silence my daughter, as they once silenced us. He took her hands, drawing her close, his touch a promise. We'll show them. Her heart isn't a weapon, it's a song. She'll shape her power with love, not fear. Zyron looked down, then brought his hand to her lips, kissing his knuckles with a tenderness that belied her strength. And what do you see, Ryder? When you look at us, at all of this? He smiled, voice quiet with awe. The woman who taught a world of silence to feel again. Her mind opened to his, a resonant chord, bright and deep. In that instant, all boundaries melted. Trust, passion, unity. Their love was a music stronger than any fear. They embraced, holding each other close as the city pulsed around them, alive with all they had dreamed. Below, two Onari walked hand in hand, their laughter drifting up like chimes. Light spilled from every window, every heart. Ryder held his queen, his partner, his love. Once lost and captive, he had found home, not in stone or city or crown, but in the heart of the princess who had taught him to sing, and in the legacy they now shared. The night air was rich with the promise of a future not ruled by fear, but by harmony, and as they gazed over Velis, Ryder knew that the truest music in all the world was the sound of a heart set free. Our story ends here. If you'd like to support us, you can use the Super Thanks button right under the video to leave a tip. It truly helps our team improve the quality of our work. We're grateful to each and every subscriber for being with us. Make sure you subscribe, press the like button, and tell us in the comments what stood out to you the most in this video. Your feedback means a lot to our team. You'll discover many more captivating stories on our channel. See you in the next one.